If we can begin on this particular policy, so loans now conditional on transferring to a low-carbon business. You don't normally exactly praise the big banks. What do you think of this policy?
Well, it's a good move. Coal's the major cause of the climate crisis, and gas is as dirty as coal. And to have any chance of meeting our obligations under the Paris Agreement and keeping global warming well below 2 degrees, we're going to need to get out of coal and gas within a decade or two at most. And I think ANZ has seen the writing on the wall and is rightly jumping off a sinking ship. And the news for coal continues to get worse, with Japan and Korea and China now all having net zero targets. 75% of Australia's thermal coal export market has now said they're not going to want the product anymore, and that's potentially going to happen within a decade or two. So it's the right decision from ANZ. It's a good move. I hope others follow suit, but it's reflecting the reality, and it's a reality the government needs to plan for.
What about smaller players? I mean, there's already been a pushback from farmers. They point out it's a bit harder for them to necessarily just transition. Next year is when the standards could apply, according to ANZ. If you stop loaning them money, maybe they won't be able to transform their business as well. Do we need to have a bit more of a nuanced approach?
I think the government needs to step in here. I mean, the private sector is in many respects leading where the government is failing, and the government's got an obligation to look after farmers. And ultimately, the government's got to choose between coal or crops. It's the government that's taking steps that are going to make it less likely that farmers are going to have viable farming land, but because the government is doing everything it can to fast-track the climate crisis. And so, again, like the coal miners and coal communities themselves that need government support as the transition happens and banks stop lending to coal mines, there's also a role here for government to step in and support farmers and decide they'll choose farmers over coal miners.
But again, isn't there an issue with ANZ saying this will start next year? You can say, well, maybe the government needs to step in. It's a pretty short time frame. You'd hope that a farmer isn't treated the same as other big businesses, right?
Well, the government had years to do this. I know that this may seem to be coming as a shock to some potential customers, but this is something that has been on the cards for years, and we've known for years that we're going to need to move towards a zero pollution society within a decade, and the farmers have got the most to lose if the climate crisis continues apace. So I expect that, and I would hope that banks will continue to work with and support farmers.
Reports today, the Queensland Greens Secretary Kitty Cara offered a deal to pay a former and outgoing party campaign manager 4 extra weeks for doing nothing after resignation was tendered. Now, this would be a misuse of the JobKeeper scheme. What's your response to this?
Well, have a look at the story. There's, at its best, it says there's a conversation which is denied by the Queensland Greens that led to nothing, and that nothing was actually done. No payment was ultimately made, and the Queensland Greens did liaise with the Australian Tax Office all the way through all of this. We've got here a disgruntled candidate who is feeding these stories, and the reason that these stories are getting an airing is that the Queensland Greens are coming home really strongly in the lead up to the election. There's a very real chance that we're going to see
if it's a disgruntled candidate,
Labor government.
It's them speaking out. But just to clarify this situation, are you saying that this didn't happen because the story goes that this person was resigning, they were offered 4 weeks to be on JobKeeper but to do nothing, which, because JobKeeper is supposed to keep you attached to an employer, would be a misuse of the scheme?
Well, my understanding is that that conversation is denied, and that's a conversation, that's one version of it from a disgruntled candidate. It's not the version from the Queensland Greens. And the Queensland Greens were in close contact with the tax office about the implementation of this scheme. I mean, this is happening because...
So you've sought clarification on that, though, when you say your understanding is?
That's right. That's right. And this is happening, and it is only happening because the Queensland Greens are in a really strong position to advance in Saturday's election, stand to win a number of seats potentially, and there's a very real chance the Greens will be working with Labor, and that'll mean making miners and big corporations pay their fair share to fund free public schooling and public manufacturing jobs. And it's obviously rattling a few people that the big developers and the corporations might have to start paying their fair share. So we're seeing these kind of scurrilous stories that really, when you pry into them, there's not much there at all.
What's the pass mark for the Greens for seats in Queensland?
Well, the Greens in Queensland are hoping to not only hold Michael Berkman's seat in Maiwar, but for Kirsten Lovejoy in McConnell and Amy McMahon in South Brisbane as well to also win those seats. And there's a chance in Cooper too. So there's at least one, potentially 3 or 4 seats that are up for grabs. And we've been running a really strong ground game in those seats and making it clear that we understand that people are fed up with politics and they want a different approach. And I think after Saturday they're going to get it.
You like to say you're not like the major parties, so we don't want false expectation management. What's the pass mark?
Well, we're hopefully certainly seeing Michael Berkman re-elected in Maiwar. He's been doing a terrific job, and that's a seat that was previously held by the LNP. And as I say, there's those 2 other seats of Amy McMahon in South Brisbane and Kirsten Lovejoy in McConnell, where we are in with real shots, and we're very, very hopeful.
Okay, so are we calling that 2, 3?
Well, those 3 seats, and certainly also in Cooper as well, there's a real chance in those. In fact, I would say in those 4 seats, and the Queensland Greens are very confident. They've got every reason to be as well. There's been a terrific campaign in the lead up to Saturday's election. It's becoming increasingly clear that people are responding to the Greens message of standing up to the big corporations and big developers, making them pay their fair share so that we can have fully funded public schools and jobs in public manufacturing. It's a push not only for more jobs, but for making the billionaires and the big corporations pay their fair share so that people in Queensland can have a better life.
Just want to return to this because I just wanted to go through the specific detail of this email from Kitty Carra. So it says, you've been granted leave without pay from your role as an electoral support officer with the Maiwar campaign for a 4-week period starting 31 August. As recipients of the JobKeeper wage subsidy for which you qualify, you'll be moved onto the JobKeeper retainer over that period, $1,500 gross per fortnight. Now, leave without pay but putting someone onto JobKeeper, that doesn't seem to be how the scheme was designed. Have you seen that email? If that's the email that's being referred to in the article today, then my understanding is that all of those emails or conversations that were generated by the Queensland Greens were done in consultation with the ATO about wanting to make sure that this new scheme that's being rolled out, that's designed to support... But have you asked to see all the emails to make sure that is the case, or check with the ATO, for example?
Yes, I've seen the emails that are referred to in the story, and we've spoken to the Queensland Greens who have been very, very clear that in implementing this new scheme, they were in consultation with the ATO. And I'll repeat the point, Tom, that really at its highest, all of this amounts to an allegation from a disgruntled candidate about a conversation that is denied that didn't result in money being paid at all. So I really think that you've got to...
Yeah, it's true that it didn't get paid.
But the reality of it.
But just clarifying, you saw that email because it mentions leave without pay and then going on a JobKeeper, which seem like different things. If someone's leaving an organisation, why would that offer be made?
Well, again, all I can do is repeat to you, Tom, that if you want to ask further questions, then you can feel free to direct them to the Queensland Greens. But I think it's pretty clear from the Queensland Greens that they've been in consultation with the ATO all the way through this. And I think, again, it's a sign of desperation from people who know the Queensland Greens are on the verge of winning some seats. And the best that they can come up with is that a conversation might have taken place, the content of which is disputed, that didn't result in any money being paid. I mean, it's a pretty long bow.
Got to leave it there. Greens leader Adam Bandt, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Tom.